Hi, I'm Max. This is how I ruined my life. Laugh so you don't cry. I wanted to make this video as a warning, I guess. You know, anyone who thinks they want to go down that path, but they're smart enough to critically think about what they're doing. You know, transitioning does go wrong for a lot of people, and this is what went wrong for me. I want to start talking about just dysphoria in general, because that is the driving force for most people. Um, for me, it's hard to say where it started. You know, I can think back to being very young and experiencing dysphoria and euphoria even as a very young child. Um, and these memories stuck within my mind because I never really understood where these emotions were coming from. And in turn, they were used as fuel for, oh, you must be trans. You know, you must be, because if you weren't, you wouldn't have had those memories. Um, One of the strongest memories for me was when I was 17 or so. Um, when my beard first came through on my face. Um, for whatever reason, it brought me so much. I don't know. It's so much. It just upset me. It brought on this panic attack and this just intense sadness. Really, um, that was probably the strongest memory of dysphoria I have. I've always hated the idea of having a beard, um, and quite young I did start to grow a beard. I have had laser done, which is why I am fairly smooth shaven. So I guess that brings me to being an adult and dealing with these emotions as an adult for the first time. I guess this was like 4 years ago now. Um, when I had just moved away from home for the first time, and I started experimenting with just my identity in general. I mean, I think everyone does that really. And that's when I learned about gender dysphoria and the whole trans movement, and really identified with it. You know, I really felt like I had been born in the wrong body. I really felt like something had gone wrong, you know, and that's when I started the journey of seeking help, I guess. Um, I went through Gender GP, and they were pretty quick to prescribe me because they used the informed consent model, which which is I, it's bad. It's bad. Informed consent is this idea that you consent on the context of being informed. You know, I was not informed. I couldn't have been informed. Nobody knows the extent and the side effects of these medical procedures, you know. And that's what I think is so scary about children undergoing these procedures, is we don't know the consequence of disturbing puberty. You know, puberty is probably the single most important thing your body does in your life. And we're messing around with it like we're God. And that's kind of scary. Scary to me. So from taking hormones, almost immediately, I was getting side effects. I remember just being tired all the time, just drained. And I used to work 13-hour shifts in a restaurant, and it never used to be a problem. But for the first time, I was struggling with that. But just struggling in general, you know. I also started getting problems with my eyes. I started getting dry eyes for the first time. But I've always been into computers and gaming and stuff, so I just thought it was that. Kind of brushed it off. It wasn't until about 3 months in when my eye symptoms especially got really bad. And I went to a optometrist who told me that the oil glands in my eyes, some of them had died off and shut down. That was quite terrifying. This idea of I've permanently damaged myself, you know, and especially something like your eyes are so important. You know, and it's been over a year now since I've stopped hormones, and I still suffer with eye issues every day. My eyes are just red, burning, and crispy constantly. It's a mild hell, I'd say. You know, there's a lot worse that can happen to you, but this for me has just been awful. Another side effect I got was I was completely impotent, which is no sex drive on hormones, which is really messed up because prior to taking hormones, I had just accepted myself as being bisexual and was ready to kind of express that. And then I was taking pills which completely killed my sexuality. That sucked. And since I've come off hormones, I do have a sex drive, but it's nothing what it used to be. You know, it's low. It's bad. You know. So all these side effects have put me in a position where I'm unable to work a normal job. You know, it's just my eyes alone just burn when I can't be in an office or a kitchen or wherever. And also just the fatigue and the brain fog. I can't concentrate. I feel like a zombie constantly. I don't sleep well. I don't eat well. you know, I'm a husk, really, of who I used to be. So yeah, that's really like a brief overview, super brief, of my experience with transitioning and the side effects. And you know, that was over a year ago, and my health has only gotten worse. But I do feel fortunate. I see videos of people who had surgeries, they've had pieces removed, and I can only imagine what it would be like to regret that. You know, it's awful. That's so awful. I really feel for these people, you know. And it's kind of hard to feel sorry for myself when I seem to have it so easy. But, you know, I do have to accept that I'm also a victim of this movement, I guess you could say. And I do want to say, like, transitioning does work for some people. You know, for like, say 1%. But it probably won't work for you. That's just the reality of it. You know. So enough about me and my story. I want to talk about the burden of passing and how awful that can be. You know, before I transitioned, before I did anything, you know, you have dysphoria, but it's not until you take hormones and you try makeup and you wear different clothes and stuff, that's when dysphoria gets really bad. For me at least. When you just see like a man in a dress, that's when it gets really hard. And if you don't want to be an activist, then you have to pass, you know. And it just got to the point where trans activism was ruining the experience for trans people who just wanted to blend in, who just wanted to integrate into society and didn't want to make this statement, you know. Also, I feel like there's a lot of internalized homophobia in the trans movement, whether people want to admit it or not. But I feel like being trans is a way for people to express their sexuality. People who felt kind of locked in. And you know, oh, it's not gay if I'm a woman. And I feel like a lot of people do fall into this trap. I'm not sure if I did, honestly. So yeah, that's my story, I guess. I've made this YouTube channel to kind of say my story, and I do want to make some more videos on this topic, but honestly, I want to start my road of recovery, getting back to the things I loved doing, like hiking and camping and rock climbing. So I hope for this YouTube channel to kind of turn into a more, hiking, camping focused channel. That's the dream anyway. But first I've gotta heal. So yeah, if you wanna support me in any way, there will be links down below. And subscribe if you care to see where life takes me. Yeah. Who knows at this point?